evening, and welcome to another episode of What's Your Story? Tonight we have the privilege of sitting down with one of our local favorites, Peter Graham. So Peter, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been a townie for quite a while. Where did you grow up?
Well, I was a townie, but I have to admit that I was born in Connecticut.
Okay.
And when after the war, World War II, my father and mother decided to move back to Maine. My mother was from Yarmouth.
Uh-huh.
So we moved to Fortune's Rocks.
Oh.
And my father worked in Biddeford, and my mother had a B&B on Neptune Street.
Oh, wow.
Neptune Avenue. I don't remember which one. You can find it someday.
I probably right in this book.
Oh, you can't find the building though someday. What happened was, we ended up in Kennebunkport because in 1947, as you know, in October there was a series of fires.
Right.
And the fire in this area touched that area of Biddeford Pool, and our house was flattened.
Oh, wow.
In that. My father was there fighting it, and in fact, Frank Hanlon was in the same group of men who were fighting it, but they got driven down to the water, and everything was, gone. But only a few houses, but a few anyway.
Yeah.
So my parents decided they kind of liked the hospitality business, so they bought a restaurant at Kennebunkport.
I did not know that.
In the fall of 1947.
Ah.
That's how I ended up here.
What was the name of the restaurant?
Graham's Restaurant.
Oh, Graham's Restaurant.
And
That's
if you see a picture, the picture floats around sometime, and it might be in this book even, one of these books, of the 300th anniversary of the town in 1953. You can see the sign.
Oh, that's
It
great.
says Graham's Restaurant on it.
Did you work there?
Well, sort of. I was, small, young when I did that, but I swept floors. And like in between the building and what was a hardware store at the time, there was a narrow alley. And my father built a platform there and put a popcorn machine in there.
Uh-huh.
And my brother and I manned the popcorn machine because the Lyric Theater was right there.
Yeah.
And people would go to that and buy popcorn. And my brother and I would wait right up to the last minute, and close it up and run up and go to a movie if it was something that we could see.
Oh, that's so great. So did you go to Consolidated School?
Yes, but at first, when we first moved here, I went to the school that used to be the high school here,
Okay.
and on the same property that the town hall is on.
Yeah.
And I went there for kindergarten through third grade.
Yeah.
And then we were supposed to go to Consolidated, but they delayed the opening of that. So we went to Cape Porpoise in a two-room schoolhouse there for the fourth grade.
Yeah.
And then for the fifth grade through 8, I think we went there in the fall of 1953 when it opened.
Yeah.
And we were there through the 8th grade.
Wow. Oh, that's wonderful. So you've seen a lot of changes.
Oh, yes. a lot
Not just the school system, but a lot of changes in town.
in town.
Wow. So did you go away to school? College?
Well, I did for a year.
Yeah.
And like some of my other friends, lasted a year. I went in the Army for 3 years. And by the time I got out, I had kind of had the wanderlust
Yep.
and left. The jobs in Maine back then were even worse much
Yeah.
worse than they are today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went to Memphis, Tennessee.
Wow.
And I got 2 degrees when I was there. I finished my undergraduate degree and got a master's degree while I was there.
So did you live there for quite a while?
Yeah, I lived there 13 years. And the plan wasn't to do that. But in the student union one day, a friend was walking toward me with a young lady, and it was love at first sight for me when I saw her. And we were married probably 3 years later.
Oh, that's
graduation,
wonderful.
When I met there. So that kept me in Memphis.
Yeah.
And like I said, for 13 years. I had joined a company I taught for a few years. Gretchen and I both taught for a
Yeah.
while. And that wasn't enough to really take care of a family. By then it was of five, 3 kids. So I got back into some line of work that I understood on the industrial end,
Yeah.
eventually manufacturing. And I had an opportunity to move to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to the corporate headquarters, which I did in 1979.
Wow.
And then I lived there until the end of 2000.
And then you moved back.
Then I moved back. And believe me, that is the desire of most of the friends I had growing up,
Yeah.
was to move back here. But only a few did. Some stayed.
Yeah.
A few that you might know. Bill Wiles, you know Bill.
Yeah. I
And
do.
I know Michael knows Jim Burrows, who was a fire chief for a long time here. We were, the two of us were in school from kindergarten all the way through the 12th grade.
Oh, that's great. So you still see these people?
I still see him sometimes.
Golf with them?
Yeah, I play golf with Bill sometimes.
Yeah.
And I see Jim once in a while. And I like to think it's like a little bit like comfort food,
Yeah.
when you have friends like that.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like friends like that, that
Yeah.
they've seen what you've seen,
Yes.
so that's really great. And so you and Gretchen, you have three
Three
kids, yep. And do they live anywhere in the area?
Yeah. No, one of them does. One lives in Hampton, New Hampshire. Our oldest daughter still lives in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and our son lives in Nashville.
Oh, wow. So, and because of the pandemic, you probably haven't seen them a whole lot.
No, we did in March, early March of 2020. We had just spent a week in Nashville, in Tennessee,
Yeah.
when the pandemic hit. So we had to cancel. We had other plans for domestic travel. Later in March, we canceled that, as everybody else did. And in April, some trips. We stayed here, but last year we did go to Michigan for Christmas.
Oh, that's good. And you've traveled outside of the country, you and Gretchen, a little bit.
Yes.
Where have you been? What's been one of your favorite places that you've been?
Well, in France, Gretchen is a really big Francophile, and I like it very much too. And particularly, we like Paris, obviously.
Yeah.
I guess everybody might like Paris.
I'm hoping someday.
Well, you can go there. We've been there a dozen or 15 times in the last 30 years. Even when we were working, we went there once in a while, and very like it a lot. Every time we go back, we see some familiar things, but we also can see new things. It's such a wonderful city.
Yeah.
And we like the country. We normally spend 2 or 3 weeks traveling around the country as well. I used to travel to Japan a lot.
Oh, wow.
On business.
Yeah.
The parent company of the company I worked for in Ann Arbor was headquartered in Tokyo. So I would go there a few times a year to business meetings.
Yeah.
And sometimes with customers. So I got to see quite a bit of Japan.
Wow. That's such a culture difference there. Can you talk a little bit about, the people that you met? Sometime, you were probably at work, but when you got out and about, did you, food and all those kinds of things, it must have been kind of fun to experience?
Yes, yeah, the food. I went to places, I went to Kyoto, for example, and because of some clients I was with, the Japanese people that I interfaced with, hired one time a miyako, which is a geisha woman who's all white. You can look this up and see it. Makeup, white makeup, beautiful clothes, and basically all she did was sit with us while we were having drinks somewhere. But it's quite different just seeing that kind of thing and being around that. The people were all very nice. and polite, I
Yeah.
suppose you could
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Tokyo was like a lot of big cities,
Yeah.
but it was still had some unique characteristics.
Mhm.
There were lots of what they call hostess bars, where after work men would go to drink, and there would be sometimes dressed as geishas, serving drinks for you,
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and that kind of thing. And that was different. The religion is going to the shrines were different. I've been to sumo wrestling, and after I retired, Gretchen had met the president one time, and they were talking, and she said, you know, I want to be able to go to Japan someday. And he said, well, when Pete retires, you can go with him.
Oh.
So I call that debt from him. And,
Good.
and a few months after I retired, Gretchen and I went over there for a couple of weeks, and
Oh,
it was
nice.
just wonderful
Wow.
traveling around.
So, and okay, you get your bearings pretty well. You just hop in a car and go, or
Oh no,
No.
it's difficult. When I first started going there were some signs in English. Today you could do that today, I suppose, if you wanted to. But no, I never did that. And I did in the city though. I learned the subway system and the train system, and went places
yeah.
there. One time we visited the grave of a friend of mine who had died when he returned to Japan. It wasn't very far out of the city, but it took us maybe an hour and a half to go there by car. It's very difficult in some places to get around that are very congested.
Yeah. So when you moved back to Maine, you've been part of a lot of organizations and done a lot of work. You've been on our board before. What are the things that you've done since you retired? Besides reading lots of books and
Well, I've loved books all my life, and I used to go to this library. I can't remember when I got a card, but it probably wasn't until I was 10 or 12 years old, so I've always been around books and loved that. And I collected books for many years.
Yeah.
I had a pretty big collection of Nobel Prize winning authors.
yeah.
And when I retired, by the time I retired, and I thought about what am I going to do with this, and I decided to start selling them.
Aha.
And I also decided though that I needed to start buying more. And I reconnected with a friend that I had known 60 years ago, who was a book dealer. He doesn't have a store, but he's been dealing in books for 50 years.
Yeah.
And he taught me a lot of things, and we traveled every week to auctions all around Maine and
Wow.
into New Hampshire,
Yep.
sometime in Massachusetts. And that consumed a lot of my time for maybe 10 or 12 years after I retired, and I began selling books.
Yeah.
And I still sell books, and I enjoy that very much.
And you've helped us a lot when we have questions about some of the books that come into to the library as donations. And I know that we've called on you, your expertise for that, and you also volunteer in our book sale on Saturdays,
Yeah.
which is so great.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
I enjoy that a lot.
Is there a book that stands out to you that that you came across, and maybe you have it in your collection, and it's like your treasure, your pride and joy?
Well, I can't think of one. That is. I collect a lot of travel books.
Okay.
I love to travel.
Yeah.
That was one thing when I met Gretchen that we had in common.
Yeah.
Both of us had traveled in Europe prior to meeting each other, and we loved doing that. And my desire to travel was great as a child even, and because my mother kind of encouraged that.
Yeah.
And I remember clearly one time when I was around 12, telling my mother I was bored and I needed a book about people traveling around the world or something. And she gave me an author and a title, and I came down to the library and they actually had it.
Oh wow.
It was by Richard Halliburton, and the Royal Road to Romance.
Oh.
And he was a young man who, from Memphis,
Uh-huh.
ironically, a young man who set out in his 20s to do different things. He climbed the Matterhorn and he swam the Hellespont in in Turkey. And unfortunately, he wanted to try to prove that he was a good traveler,
Yeah.
and, explorer. And he got a couple of guys together in Hong Kong, and they tried to sail a junk to the West Coast, and unfortunately, they never made it, and they were never seen again.
Oh, wow.
But he wrote a lot of travel books.
Yeah.
And I like those books a
Yeah.
lot.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So you are you still on the cemetery committee?
Yes,
I know you've
am.
been part of
I'm
that.
doing that.
So what's your role there? This is
I'm
the
a treasurer there.
okay.
Yeah.
And so so when people think about we have a lot of cemeteries here, mostly
Small ones, yeah.
family,
Yeah,
right?
that's
that
right.
are that are on family land, but that one's really interesting. There's a group of you. How many are on the committee?
Well, there are 9 of us on that board.
Yeah. So what do you do as that committee? Is not just being treasurer, but as your group.
Well, we manage the cemetery,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the things we've done is we monitor the burials and
Mm-hmm.
the type of burials.
Yeah.
And I know this is kind of a different topic that people don't talk about a lot, but 75% of the deaths resulting cremations in the state of Maine. So that translates into
Wow.
for cemeteries a change, obviously,
Yeah.
from 50 years ago
Right.
when it was probably reversed.
Yeah.
And so we have to plan for that.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did back in the 90s was buy the first kind of a columbarium
Yeah.
for cremains.
Mm-hmm.
And then we practically sold that out a few years ago, and so we have just built another one.
Yeah.
So we do things like that,
Yeah.
is trying to manage
Yeah.
things that are happening, and of course take care of the grounds.
Yeah. Can anybody be buried there?
Sure, anybody can be.
Okay.
It isn't just local, although it tends to be local.
Tends to
but,
be
yeah.
local, yeah. Because I know that there's some towns will have you have to be a resident for X amount of years, or even be, if you're living there.
Yeah.
If you move away, you can't come. There's
Yeah.
been. It's such a pretty area too.
It's a nice area
So,
too, yeah.
and
very
you all
nice.
do such a great job, because that's just something people don't think about. It's like somebody's
right.
doing that.
That's right.
Well, you're doing that. So,
You probably know about my fishing experience too with the senior center, driving.
oh, that's right.
I enjoy that a lot. I do that about once a week.
Yep, you're still doing that.
Yeah, I have an appointment this afternoon to do that. But
That's
there are
wonderful.
there are some volunteers, but I might make a pitch that we need more people to
You
drive.
need drivers.
Because some of us are getting, up there a little bit.
Yeah. So FISH is Friends in Service Help.
No,
No.
in service to humanity.
Oh, Service to Humanity. Oh, okay. I like that better.
Yeah, I do.
So if somebody gets on through the senior center, if someone needs your service there, what do they do?
Well, they have to apply now,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to fill out some forms. They can do that, I think, on the phone. They don't have to go there to do that.
Yeah.
No money is exchanged. There's
Yeah.
nothing like that. This is strictly all voluntary, and it can only be for medical
Okay.
appointments.
Okay. So if somebody says, "Hey, can you take me to the grocery store?"
No,
Yeah. So, and I think there must be other organizations that help with that sort of thing, but
Yeah.
you're there to just take people to medical
That's right.
appointments.
yeah,
So I think I might have shared this story with you before, but this is so, I love to tell this tale. So my sister Penny works for Southern Maine Healthcare, and she was working for Prime Care years back, and she would be at the front desk in one of the offices, and they would do the blood draws and all the different things when people would come in. And there was a woman that would always come in and say, how long is my appointment going to be? Because I have fish in the car. And so my sister said, well, 30 minutes, something like that. And then she'd leave and she'd come back in and she'd sit down. And so, after the third or fourth time this happened, my sister Penny said, do you mind me asking? And she said, oh, that's my driver from Kennebunkport. So all this time, it was like, I've got fish in the car, right? And if it's a hot summer day,
good,
whatever. So I always found that, and I love that. I love that service because I think there are a lot of people that are either retired here or they no longer drive because maybe they can't see very well,
right, yeah.
or so. What a great service that you're providing. So.
I might bring up one other thing about post-retirement. And the reason I want to say that is that I wanted to retire so bad for a long time. And I had a list of things that I wanted to do. And I've told you a few of them. Wanting to drive was, believe it or not, one because I knew from my mother's situation and from other friends of hers that there was a need for doing that.
Yeah.
But, Kennebunkport was a big shipbuilding area. And growing up, I used to hang out at a couple of boatyards. One that became Reed's. I forgot what it was called when I was younger. But also at Clemmy Clark's boatyard by the gristmill. And someone gave me a 14-foot catboat. It had a mast that you put in yourself in the front of the sail.
Yeah.
And I took it up to Clemmy's, and he let me use some caulking material and putty and paint and get it all in shipshape. But I had a desire from that point to do something with boats. And I never really did that in my adulthood. I missed that goal that I had. And so when I retired, before I retired, I built a strip canoe, in my garage in Ann Arbor.
Wow.
But when I got back here, I decided I was going to build a boat, and I built a 12-foot skiff in my building out back of my garage.
Yeah.
And I wanted to thought about bringing a picture, but I forgot to. So I'll show you someday.
Yeah.
What it looks like. It's still in the water almost 20 years later, and I enjoy that kind of thing too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Have you ever thought about doing a class, like teaching kids something like that?
No, because I'm not, there's plenty of people that are much more skilled than I am. I struggle for 3 months to do this.
But you have patience, and some people don't.
I had some there, but I do sometime.
So as we wrap up, we always like to ask some rapid fire, one-word answers. So do you have a favorite color?
Oh, it's green.
Green.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite book?
Oh, yeah. I read it years ago, and it inspired me. It's called The Pearl by John Steinbeck. I don't know if you have a copy here.
We do. Yeah. We do. So what is your favorite vacation spot?
Well, Paris.
Paris.
Yeah.
Good. Favorite restaurant?
Well, it's not in Kennebunkport, but I like the Village Tavern a lot.
Oh, I do too.
Locally, I like Hurricane.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have a favorite cocktail?
I believe it or not, because I'm not a Southerner, but I lived in Tennessee where Jack Daniels was produced, and I like Jack Daniels a lot.
Okay, that's great. What's your favorite thing to do locally? So if you had to tell a family that was shopping in the book sale, and they wanted to know, we've got the afternoon, what should we go do here?
Well, I think that you should take a self-walking tour in different places.
Yeah.
And one place, of course, is this over in here with the Captain Lord Mansion and that area.
Yeah.
Some of those homes are just beautiful.
They are.
I think in my neighborhood, not my house, but in that neighborhood, which is a historic neighborhood, because there are some old homes in there too scattered around. But I think what people don't do, and they don't even drive sometime, they come to town and they go into town and they leave.
Right.
And they miss out on seeing what's between the breakwater, the Colony Beach, and the Bush compound.
Yeah.
It's a magnificent piece of land.
It really is.
They should park down there they can park at St. Anne's.
Mm-hmm.
And they can go into St. Anne's and see what a wonderful church that is inside, and then walk the
Such
rest
a great
of the way.
point. Yeah.
And people don't do that
Yeah.
for some reason.
It's such a I mean, it's really the architecture and just that whole, you've got that ocean, all along
That's
the
right.
way. So
and
so
the other
pretty.
thing they could do is have lunch at I don't want to promote a restaurant, but that out that the out the not the what I forgot what it's called next to the pier at the restaurant where you sit outside. But
Down in Cape Porpoise?
yeah,
Yeah.
but you can sit outside and
Yeah.
have a reasonably priced, very very good lobster roll or chowder there,
Yep.
and you have $1 million view
Ah.
looking at the lighthouse from there.
I know.
That to me is another
Yeah.
special place, and I know it's hard to park there, but that's a place people
Worth
should
it.
go also. It's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
worth the time to do that.
Great advice.
Yeah.
That's great advice. So I just want to say, while we have you here, you have been such a help to me in the years that I've been here. You have the patience of Job, as I said. Just your ability to always say yes if we ask you something. Your volunteerism. We love you and Gretchen. We're so happy that you're here in town. And I whenever I sit down and talk with you, I always just love listening to your story. So thank you for everything you've done for us, and thanks for being on our show. We
Thank you.
really appreciate it. So
Thank you, and thank you for the comments too.
yeah.
I've enjoyed this visit with you.
Yeah. So thank you all for tuning in. And we hope to see you back on our next episode of What's Your Story? Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you. Cut.